I've already pushed myself to the brink of death.
Hey.
Oh my god. I get it.
Nice to see ya.
Huh? Oh, come on! You gotta admit this is cool!
Final Fantasy has gone through many changes, evolutions throughout the span of its lifetime. Some are more consistent in its iteration, while others take risks, reinvent the wheel, in the hopes that the franchise can bolster its mainstream appeal, build an even broader audience than ever before. And it's the latter that the fandom hasn't been shy in voicing their frustrations. Hell, I've voiced my own like-minded opinions, frustrations, concerns about Final Fantasy and its gameplay identity issues, its game design issues in general. It has been 24 years since the series was able to consistently build on its game design it held close for multiple entries. It's that familiar game design that many have grown accustomed to that associate that familiarity of Final Fantasy to its identity. And so that frustration, those concerns that fans feel is extremely warranted. With all of that said, I've talked about the issues that come with modern Final Fantasy in so many of my videos, but I believe that these games are still very important, relevant to the growth of the series, to the fans that come to enjoy these new takes on a Final Fantasy game. I think what many people fail to realize when participating in this discourse on modern Final Fantasy, trying to deny these newer entries because of their differences, is the fact that there's a whole generation who's grown up playing these modern titles, who will grow up playing them. FF14, 15, 16, and the remakes. These games are Final Fantasy to a lot of young teens, young adults. There is always going to be that influence when a franchise reinvents itself, brings this new, fresh take to the series we haven't seen before. And now you have these new fans, both young and old, who are inevitably drawn to it because it's something more digestible for them, for newcomers. Something they can gravitate towards, to be attached to, as opposed to the older games that just maybe isn't for them. Or again, just a new generation of gamers who are growing up playing these modern entries. And so when I hear people say that Final Fantasy should just completely leave behind their ambitions, these action-oriented games, be told they have to revert back and simply copy and paste old game design because they dared to take risks, I disagree with that. It disregards the new fans that the series has brought in that do like the action-oriented titles and how drastically different each game can be from the last.
I think I'm getting the picture now.
Fuck.
14 is a very different feeling game from 15, and 15 is vastly different than 16. These are brand new games in every sense of the word for the franchise. To some, it's that major difference between each title that makes Final Fantasy special, that makes it feel fresh and exciting with every new release. In a world where many companies choose to recycle the same formula for a handful of games on end, give you the same game with a new number attached to the title to give you that illusion that what you're getting is something new. In reality, it's just more uninspired, soulless creations where creativity is rushed, sacrificed. Because why make a genuinely new, creative, fun game when you can just chase trends? Make the same game over and over again where it's guaranteed to make hundreds of millions every time. This isn't to say that Final Fantasy is creating something entirely new to gaming every single time, right? I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is a very heavily inspired character action game along the lines of Devil May Cry, while its world is also inspired by Game of Thrones, while beautifully mixing in its own Final Fantasy isms into it. But every game isn't like the last one. They make it an effort to give players a fresh experience with each entry. I've expressed my own thoughts, frustrations about how drastic that change in gameplay direction of the series is. That maybe consistency is a necessity, sure, but the truth is it has expanded this fandom to be extremely diverse for better or worse. Actually, scratch that, for better and worse. You may not be one of those people who enjoyed Final Fantasy 15 or 16, but there are tons of people who absolutely do. A very large faction of fans who ride or die for these games. And say if Final Fantasy 17 or 18 bites the bullet, reverts back to turn-based, that older JRPG game design, it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. It won't suddenly cause everyone to agree and say, oh, this is what Final Fantasy should be now. Hell, the fandom can't even agree on whether to go with the modern hybrid action approach of the remakes, or to simply call it quits and have Final Fantasy go back to turn-based for the remainder of its lifetime. With a franchise as big as this, you're almost never going to find unity, but at the same time, I think a lot of people within this fandom can learn that you can appreciate both. You're allowed to want Final Fantasy to grow and evolve into something even greater than it was before, while at the same time finding that balance between iteration and innovation, man. That is honestly my ultimate desire for Final Fantasy as it stands now. Final Fantasy since the early 2000s has been chasing more action-oriented gameplay, trying to establish itself within the genre. Except the problem is, they've been struggling with that a lot. And the biggest reason for that is because none of the gameplay that gets introduced in one entry ever gets the chance to breathe, to grow into something more. And that is a shame because we now see the benefits to perfecting a formula with the recent 7 remake. We see how such a meticulously crafted battle system can grow into something even more spectacular with another entry. That is something Final Fantasy has been missing. And my goodness, this is the type of potential modern Final Fantasy has. I mean, could you imagine Final Fantasy 17 adopts the hybrid action of the remakes, builds on it, but puts its own unique spin to it to make it equally as fresh and interesting as it is consistent. Takes from other classic game design elements from past games and just iterates on it. Maybe another true variation of the sphere grid system from 10. Maybe a system like 6 where you get new abilities from each summon that you collect and level up. Maybe we adopt and iterate on the world design that Rebirth introduced to the series. And I mean, after FF16, you gotta add the active Time Lord to the game. I mean, all heavy story games need this. The problem to modern Final Fantasy was never a question of whether these games are Final Fantasy or not, because let's be real, these still absolutely are, regardless of them not being turn-based. I mean, if we're still on this debate even after 20 years since the last true turn-based game, what are we doing? I think what's more important than anything is getting these new entries to start combining the best elements from each of their recent games. Create something truly inspired, where I can say only Final Fantasy is doing this. I've recently gotten criticized that I'm not allowed to champion devs' creative freedom and vision while also asking for some gameplay consistency, when I don't think you have to choose one or the other. I've stressed numerous times that the lack of gameplay consistency is what's holding back the series. And listen, all I want to see is the franchise marching to the beat of their own drum, being inspired by themselves, looking inward rather than out, taking elements from past games and building on that for the future rather than reinventing itself all of the time. There is so much potential for the modern Final Fantasy games. And yes, I am still of the mind that devs shouldn't be told what they should be creating to make a game that they're passionate about. But there has to be a balance, especially for this franchise. Give us something inspired, fresh, creative, but adopt game design established in the past and perfect it. Final Fantasy is a massive franchise with well over 30 years of history. It has gone through many changes, evolutions, deviations, and guess what? It's going to continue going through changes, evolutions, deviations. And you know what? That's just how it goes. With a franchise that's been going on for as long as this, did we really expect 16 games of the same exact gameplay? Yep, probably not. Final Fantasy 1 through 10 had a whole generation of kids, teens, adults who experienced those games, holding a special place in their hearts. Final Fantasy 11 through 16 had a whole generation of kids, teens, adults who experienced those games, holding a special place in their hearts. And every time there's going to be a generation who points to those games when it's all said and done, appreciate them for what they were. We shouldn't be limiting the franchise to copy and pasting, playing it safe, from a franchise that has made it clear that it wants to do more, that it wants to branch out, provide the unexpected. Would I like a more classic Final Fantasy game again? Yes, absolutely. Should we have both ambitious, classic, and modern Final Fantasy games being developed in tandem to one another? I mean, nothing would make me happier. But most of all, we should be encouraging creativity, iteration, evolution, not bashing these developers, putting them in a box, expecting them to simply copy and paste older games instead of iterating, building on something current, something new, something that has the potential to grow even more with just a few more entries. After all, it was that balance between iteration and innovation that made Final Fantasy such a juggernaut, and I cannot stress how close we are to this, especially if Square Enix is smart in the direction they go from here. We've had ATB turn-based for 10 straight entries. We've had more action-oriented entries for 6, though not as consistent. There's still room for improvement on that front, whether they take from the remake formula, take from FF15 or 16, maybe an evolution from the DNA of all 3, or maybe a fresh start yet again. But the truth is, each and every game has brought in new fans, shown them a very different take on what Final Fantasy can be, the potential it has going forward, each becoming more ambitious, pushing different aspects of their game to the limits. There's no telling how the next game will go, what direction they end up taking, but I do know it'll be another exciting experience, one that is yet again ambitious and welcomes both old and new fans to another unforgettable journey they'll remember for years. And so I really do believe that modern Final Fantasy still has a place.